We're a nonprofit that's dedicated to ending sex discrimination in athletics. So we provide the legal advocacy that people need. What you're going to be getting today is a master course in political science, feminism, and advocacy. So we're going to show you how to do it all. So these are the kinds of things that I have done slash do. I'm an Olympic champion from the 1984 Olympics. I went to Duke University and I write a lot, and I've been doing this kind of work in different formats for the last 35 years. Ta-da! So check out the Beastie Nancy. So that's back in my swimming days. Right there, I was 162 pounds, baby, of pure solid. Whew. Title IX is a statute. It is a civil rights law that was passed as part of the Education Amendments of 1972. Okay, so this is what it says right here. That this is the text of Title IX on this slide here. But and it says, no person in the United States shall, so no person being like any of you, on the basis of sex, because you're a female or male, be excluded from participation in, or be denied the benefits of, or be subject to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. And by federal financial assistance, what I mean is tax dollars. Okay. As soon as an institution, an educational institution, receives tax dollars, then they agree not to discriminate based on sex. Fun fact, Title IX was actually based on another statute that got passed in 1964. Okay, quick outline of civil rights laws. First, in 1954, Brown versus Board of Education came out. Brown versus Board of Education said separate but equal was inherently unequal. And it said that schools, at any public institution, like public schools, could not segregate based on race. All right. And then, so that was 1954. It took till 1964 before the whole big omnibus civil rights package passed. And that was housing and public accommodations and banking, and they couldn't redline, banks couldn't redline anymore, and employment, right? It was this whole big thing. And part of it was this exact statute, except instead of the word sex, it says race, color, national origin. So it just swapped those out. After Title IX was passed, shortly thereafter, the Rehabilitation Act was passed, which bars schools that receive federal funds from discriminating based on ability. And then after that was age discrimination. So you have 4 statutes that are all basically the same, which says that we give you federal funds and you agree not to discriminate. I know all of you have had civics in probably 7th or 8th grade. So, we've got 3 branches of government, right? And here's how a good idea gets worked through government. So first, somebody has an idea, says, hey, we're giving all these schools all this federal funds, all this money. Maybe they shouldn't be discriminating. So then that gets passed in a statute, right? So Congress passed Title IX in 1972. After that very simple statute gets passed, I want you to notice that in that statute, it says nothing about sexual harassment, sexual assault, pregnancy discrimination, LGBT discrimination. It doesn't say anything about any of that. It only says no discrimination based on sex. So after a statute gets passed, then it moves to the executive branch. What are you doing, Janine? Thank you. Okay. So after it goes from Congress, then it goes over to the executive branch. So the President of the United States determines who's in their cabinet and who's going to be in charge of all these agencies. And one of the agencies is the Department of Education. And the enforcement arm of the Department of Education is the Office for Civil Rights. So right, so you've got President, Department of Education, Office for Civil Rights. Title IX gets passed in 1972. in 1975, the executive branch, the administrative agency, came up with the rules that tell schools how to measure equality between men's and women's sports. Okay, because before schools were saying, how do we know? Now, I think a lot of that is silly because it's just not that hard to figure out. But they had to come out with exact metrics so that you all, as students, would know whether or not it was fair to go ask a school whether or not women's or men's program could ask for more. Okay, we're going to go over, there's one more test that came out in 1979 that further clarified what the government means when they say you have to provide equal opportunity. All right, so we're going to get there. Okay, so first you've got the statute, then you've got the regulations. After the regulations, then people have arguments about what does Title IX mean, and so you have plaintiffs who bring a case, and you have the schools who try to say we're not discriminating, and they go in front of a court to make a decision, and they use both the statute and the regulations to make that determination. So as to whether or not there's sex discrimination going on. One of the most important cases that came out of the courts is one called Cohen versus Brown University. Some of the plaintiffs are friends of mine to this day, but in the early 90s, Brown University cut 2 men's programs, 2 women's programs, but it cut the proportion of women's programs so that women as a percentage of all the athletes, it cut them. And so the women sued to reinstate their programs. And that case went up to the appellate courts 3 times and went up to the United States Supreme Court twice. They rejected it, thank God, because all the rulings really went the way of the athletes. And it's one of those things, because it was fought so hard and we won every single place. In all 3 of these cases, the law's uniform, and it's all very clear that equal means equal. 1978, after they did the 1975 regulations, they said schools had 3 years to come into compliance. So we're obviously not there yet. So here we are 49 years after Congress passed Title IX, and we're not doing well at all. What did it do? Before Title IX, women really had very few high school and college sports. I know it's hard for you all to believe, but that's really not that long ago. I was the first generation to really benefit from Title IX. So I went in high school, I started in 1976. I graduated from high school in 1980. And it seemed like that suddenly there were all these opportunities to participate in college. In 72, there were 30,000 women participated in collegiate sports as opposed to 170,000 men. So now we have over 150,000 playing college sports, which still is not as much as men had in 1972. In high schools, girls' sports participation grew from about 300,000 to I think it's 3.4 million, right, Janine? Yeah, so we need to fix that slide. It's 3.4 million now. Sex discrimination in college sports is a national crisis. And why do we say that? Because the gaps between what men and women are getting are growing. So I, for the last literally 30 years, have been making presentation without the purple line, right? So just the gray line and the blue line. And I would usually say, and ladies and gentlemen, I want you to notice 3 things about this graph. I want you to notice that number 1, the lines never do this, okay? So women's gains never come at men's expense. So at no point in time do you see this, okay? Number 1. Number 2 is, notice that since about the year 2000 or 2001, that the gap didn't change at all, okay? Number 2. And then 3rd is, notice just how big that gap is. But guess what? What women are entitled to is not Well, women are entitled to whatever the school is providing the men. So if the school doesn't have an athletic department, then the women aren't entitled to anything. But if the school is providing a lot to men, then that's what women get as well. All right. So it's in women's best interest to have men getting a lot, because that means the women get a lot. But here's the deal. Women have been college students a lot more. There are more women who are attending university than there are men. So if the school is hypothetically 80% women, 20% men, I'll just use exaggerated numbers. But if that is hypothetically the numbers, then the athletic opportunities should be 80% women, 20% men, and vice versa, right? So a school that has more men will have more athletic opportunities than the women. Okay, so whatever the percentage of the student body is, that's about what you're looking for. So when you do that comparison, what you see when it says, see where it says true discrimination gap, what I want you to notice is that's a third. Women are missing out on a third of the opportunities that they should be getting. A third. Here's what's worse is the gap is growing. If you couldn't tell by that slide right there, is that in the 10 of the last 15 years, more participation opportunities have been added for men than for women. So it's widened, it's increased by 27%. I say it's because nobody was minding the store. Nobody was advocating to make sure that girls and women had equal opportunities. Because men's and women's athletic departments are not mirror images of each other. Okay, they don't, men have football and baseball, and women, instead of football, it may take 5 sports to make one football team. As if this is 125 athletes over here, it may take 5 women's teams to equal 125. So because they don't look exactly the same, sometimes it's not easy for the athletes to be able to tell whether or not there's sex discrimination going on in participation. But almost every athlete that I've ever talked to, as soon as you talk to them for more than 3 minutes, they get it, that they're not getting treated the same way that the male athletes are getting treated. So it's getting worse, 27%. We have got to stop it. Current gaps between men and women in athletics are enormous. This is not some little thing. In college scholarship dollars, I know a lot of you have parents that are paying for college, so you'll appreciate this. It's almost $1 billion that women are being denied in college scholarships. Women are receiving fewer recruiting dollars. When you think of recruiting dollars, that's part of how a school's supposed to treat men and women. That has to do with treatments and benefits, which I'll get to in a second. But that's part of that. It's a metric we can use to say that men and women are not getting equal treatment. And then probably most importantly is women are missing out on 183,000 opportunities. Next slide, please. So what is 183,000 opportunities? That is 4,500 equestrian teams. That's 5,600, almost 5,700 rugby teams. That's 12,000 squash teams. That's 5,500 wrestling teams, 21,000 triathlon teams, 9,000 synchronized swimming teams. These are, when we think about what a sports experience means for a girl for the rest of her life, it means they're going to make more money. They're going to get more education. They're much more likely to go into STEM careers. They're much less likely to get breast cancer. They're less likely to get osteoporosis. They're less likely to be depressed. All kinds of metrics on what it means for a woman for the rest of her life. When we think of 183,000 women being denied these opportunities because they're women, it's really shocking. What makes measuring sex discrimination so easy when it comes to sports participation is the fact that you've got sex segregated sports. So you've got men here and women here. It's really hard, y'all, to determine whether or not like somebody's being discriminated against in their employment, or whether or not they get fired because they're African American or because they're Asian. That's hard. This, not so hard. Next slide. Okay, so who are the decision makers? Who are you all going to be reaching out to get this change, to get more teams added, to get more scholarship dollars and get more better treatment for men and women? Is who are the decision makers? One is the Department of Education, the Office for Civil Rights. As I was saying, they are essentially like the police. It's their job to go out and make sure that schools are complying. They will respond to individual complaints, but they pretty much want the whole case completely done. Then we look at sports governing bodies. Okay, so you all know that you have the NCAA, the NAIA, junior colleges, Christian colleges, et cetera. All these different athletic conferences, these college athletic conferences. If they wanted to, very easily, they could say, if you want to be a member of the NCAA or of, say, the the conference, you have to be in compliance with Title IX. You cannot discriminate based on sex. But guess what? They don't want to, because nobody wants to be the bad guy. They don't want to be the police. They want to just go out there and make more money. So, those are decision makers. Then at the schools, you've got the president, the athletic director, general counsel, Title IX coordinators. You've got the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and you've got donors. And then lastly, we have Congress. So we have all these, those are all sort of targets on who can we sort of get to get this change here. All right, next slide. Okay, so for 5 years, Champion Women, we reached out. We have a really robust summer program of research assistance, and we gave away literally millions of dollars in free legal work to schools that we broadcasted it out to the university as widely as we could. We tried really hard not to shame schools, not to humiliate them. We did not go to the media with this information. We really thought, like, if you knew how bad it was, you would do something about it. And guess what? It didn't work at all. They were like, they just ignored it. So at least schools cannot say they didn't know. They cannot say, like, really? Oh gosh, well, we'll get studying on it. We'll start working on it right away because we've already been telling them. Next slide, please. All right, so we shifted strategies. Okay, so instead of just like, giving away all this free legal work, instead I hired Janine who's here, and we built the website Title IX Schools. I hope you all have looked at your school or any schools that you're interested in, and to see how they're discriminating or not. So then we sent letters to all the conferences that aggregated the data, which you're going to see in the next slide in just a second. We worked with the California Women's Law Center. We amplified it on social media. And this time we really did go to the media. We've gotten some really great response. And we reached out to teams that got cut, and allegedly because of COVID. And we hosted big Zoom meetings with, up to 160 different squares, kind of like we have tonight, but 160 of them, with the athletes and their parents and the donors and the alumni, and all the supporters who were part of the school. And unfortunately, only current students have legal standing to be able to bring the case. So that's why the 18 to 22-year-olds need to have a community around them to support the endeavor. And so we're winning big time. All right, next slide, please. All right, so this is Ms. Magazine. They wrote a really great article for us. But that's all changing due to the heroic efforts of student activist athletes across the country who are filing an onslaught of new Title IX lawsuits with the encouragement and legal backup of Champion Women, the organization that advocates for girls and women in sports. People talk about Title IX compliance. This is key, everybody. Listen to this. People talk about Title IX compliance. We have to move away from that language because it doesn't represent the harm that is being done to girls and women. Instead, call it what it is. Athletic departments are engaged in institutionalized, intentional sex discrimination. In other words, it's not a oops, oh gosh, I'm so sorry that it turns out that girls have half the opportunities that men do. It's not right. They plan it for years before they start a team, when they construct their athletic department. So it's not negligence. This is intentional conduct. They are intentionally planning to give women far, far less than they're giving men. All right, next slide, please. So those of you that watch the basketball, the NCAA basketball championships, the Final Four, Sedona Prince made an amazing TikTok that was on Twitter, and it got seen millions of times. And what she showed was just what are some of the differences between the men's and the women's Final Four. And this was the women's weight room, which is really, really embarrassing. And then that was the men's weight room. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is a civil rights issue. All right, next slide, please. This was the food. Next slide. This was the swag bags. Notice everything says like March Madness, and none of the women's stuff uses that language. Next slide. Okay, we can close the gaps. We have all the law, the regulations, and the case law is 100% on our side. Next slide. Okay, so current students are the key to stopping the intentional sex discrimination. Athletes can advocate to reinstate a sport that a school tries to cut, or students can just get schools to add a sport that has not been offered in the past. Or students can advocate to get more scholarship dollars, to get treated the same way, or all of the above. Okay, so what we're doing right now is when a school cuts a team, we make sure that those plaintiffs understand that the lawyers that we're going to marry them with are going to go in and get the whole athletic department complying with Title IX and to end their sex discrimination. It's not just about getting one or two teams reinstated. It's about moving through the entire athletic department and stopping what's going on. All right, next slide. Okay, so athletes or students have three options. Number one is they can try to resolve it through the school with a demand letter. It always helps to have a very scary lawyer to have the demand letter, and they know how to write it, so it's very scary for the school to say, like, basically we're going to win. And I'll tell you about that in a second. Two is they can file a complaint in federal court, a Title IX lawsuit to remedy the sex discrimination. And third is they can file a complaint with the OCR. In general, I don't recommend it. We just had a meeting this morning with the Secretary of Education, and she sounded like she was really interested in moving on this project. And but wait till I hear something's going to happen. Essentially, it's like a victim going to the police, and the police then can go do whatever they want to. Like they only interact with the school, and so they don't have the plaintiff or the victims of sex discrimination don't have an opportunity to keep going back to the OCR and saying, that's nonsense, that's a lie, that's not true. So the remedy that you get is not always what the athlete wants. Okay, but if you go to court, you get the remedy that you want, right? So who can bring it? Only current students have standing This is like your law school 101 here. They have the ability to bring the lawsuit. So an alumni can't do it, a parent can't do it unless somebody's under 18 years old, or boosters, or the coach wishes they could do it, but they cannot. They don't have the power. Only current students have the power. Next slide. All right, so every lawsuit asks a court to resolve two things. Okay, all right, so let's talk about it in terms of a car accident. Okay, so the court will determine what the facts were, and then they'll determine what law it is that they're going to apply. Okay, so in a car accident, maybe there was a question as to whether or not the light was red or green, and the parties can't decide among themselves. They've already listened to what the other side is going to say, and so they go in front of a court, and you'll have some witnesses say that the light was red and some witnesses say the light was green, and then the court makes a decision. The light was red. Okay, after the light was red, does the person sitting next to them get to be able to sue for their damages from this accident when they were a passenger in the case? All right, so that's a question of law. Who gets to recover? What if the passenger knew that the driver was drunk? Okay, what if the person wasn't in the car accident, but they were on the side and they were traumatized by there was a lot of blood and guts and gore, and they had to help people get out of the car accident? Can they recover for their damages, not being able to sleep for months and months? All right, so those are all questions of law. My husband's a judge. He does not do the kind of judging of the factual questions. He's an appellate court judge. It only has to do with questions of law. All right, so got it? You go in front of a court. That's all a court does. They determine what are the facts and what's the law. Okay, that's the alpha and omega. In a Title IX lawsuit, it's easy in that the facts are, how does the school allocate its resources between men and women? Okay, so there are several places that we can get facts from. Number one is from the information that schools themselves have to give over to the Department of Education, and they give it. It's on a website that you can look at right there. It's called the EADA. If you just type into your Google search bar EADA, usually the first thing that comes up is Equity and Athletics Disclosure Act. And in there is a website that the schools provide that information. Okay. The problem is most families, most athletes, most coaches, they don't know how to interpret the data that's up there. They don't know. It's not done. It's not presented in a way that would help you to know if it's fair to ask for more opportunities. All right. So Janine and I, worked on this website that gives a simple pass-fail on 3 metrics. Numbers of opportunities that a school needs to add women, number 1. Number 2 is how many scholarship dollars does the school need to add? And third is the recruiting dollars. Okay, so all those facts, remember, come from the school themselves. All right, second place to get the facts, right? So the first 2 websites, one is from the Department of Ed, one is from, all right, but it's the same facts. All we did is we took the facts, applied math to it, and showed for over 2,000 schools whether or not a school is discriminating. All right, the second place to look for the facts is to go onto the school's website itself. And so say at University of North Carolina, go Heels, and you'll say like, okay, the softball program, and you literally just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So, right, and you count and you see what the numbers are. How many men, how many women, okay? I can tell you, Janine and I have been doing this for quite a while now, and the numbers almost always get worse from EADA when you actually look at the rosters. The rosters usually is not as good, not as rosy a picture as what you get on EADA. So when we found out that 90% of schools are not complying under EADA, and then you go on to Go Heels, or you go onto the individual school's website, it's actually worse. All right, next. All right, so this is what we sent to the ACC. Okay, so let's go over Duke University here, right? So that's where I went. So it's the third one down. Okay, and you scroll across and you see Duke University needs to add $1.2 million in scholarship dollars to be giving men and women equality. Duke University, my school, needs to add 100 women's opportunities. That's probably in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 new teams. 3 to 5 new teams. I'm not going to get into the minutia of the difference between duplicated count and unduplicated count. And then if you keep following over, Duke University needs to add, give their women programs 1.3 million more dollars in recruiting dollars. All right, so you can go through there. I mean, yes, I went to Duke University, but UNC Chapel Hill, they need to add $6.5 million. They need to add 362 opportunities for women in sports. Again, this is not negligence. This is intentionally designed this way. All right. So just one conference in the whole country needs to add $45 million. They need to add 1,450 opportunities for women in collegiate sports. Now, remember what it means for somebody for the rest of their life to have had this experience, and they're being denied that. Why? Because they're women. Next slide. All right, this is a terrible slide in terms of it's very busy, but what I want you to get from this slide is Janine and I looked at all different levels of sport, like, right, NCAA, Division 1, 2, 3, junior colleges, HBCUs, Christian colleges. We looked at all different kinds of schools to say, is there some place in the country geographically where somebody can get away from the sex discrimination? And the answer is no. There's no place geographically, there's no level of sport, it doesn't matter the ACC, the schools we were just looking at, those are the rich schools. There's no economic reason why they're not giving women equality. If they're a rich school, if they were a poor school, I would think HBCUs would do a better job because they inherently understand discrimination based on some immutable characteristic. Oh no, HBCUs are really awful. So that's what you're supposed to get from the slide. Next slide, please. All right, so now, okay, so that's where we get the facts, right? Okay, so let's go to the law. This is the statute. Again, no person shall. Next slide. Okay, all right. So the law requires this 1975 regulations that we showed you was like the slide number 4. That the way you measure equality is, do women have equal participation opportunities? Do they have equal scholarships? And are they getting treated the same way? All right, next slide. So this is benefits and treatment. This is like how somebody's treated. Okay, so Millicent and her sister, Helen Claire, started playing softball when they were, I think, like 7 years old. So at a very young age. And after about their third practice, they came to me and said, Mom, how come the boys have restrooms and we don't have restrooms? Why do they have a scoreboard? We don't have a scoreboard. Why do they have a dugout? We don't have a dugout. We just have benches here. It was like they had looked at all these things here in the Title IX lingo. It's called the laundry list. But it was like they had taken this class and had figured out how to measure sex discrimination. So I think if you all like had a blank slate and you were going to come up with like, well, gosh, how would we measure whether or not there's equality? You would probably say, it's probably important that we have equal medical care for men and women. It's probably important that we have equal housing, that men and women would travel the same way, right? I think is everybody this is kind of intuitive stuff. So say for the final 4, Were the women getting the same publicity that the men were getting? Of course not. Were they getting the same? Was the NCAA working as hard to make sure that the women's program was successful as they were the men's program? Of course not. After basketball happened, shortly thereafter was softball and volleyball. And they had the exact same problems of not getting the same treatment that the NCAA and their schools were providing to the men. All right, next slide. Oh, so the next slides, we're going to just go through these. We're going to skip them because we're going to run short on time. For the next 3 slides, I think that Mara is going to give you a copy of this. But these slides were actually, the next 3 slides are what the athletes who are in the Pac-12, what they came up with, how they would measure equality between men and women, right? And they had some really great ideas. But what was interesting was they didn't know, these are very, very smart athletes. These were, all going to graduate school, and they didn't know that what they wanted was already covered by Title IX. They already had the legal authority to be able to do this. They thought they had to go to Congress. They thought that they had to have a strike. They thought that, right? They didn't realize, like, no. Generations of women have already been doing this so that you can advocate for it. Unfortunately, all the adults in the room, all of the university presidents and the athletic directors and the NCAA, as handsomely as they're paid, they've left the conversation. They're not going to do it. You have to do it. So in 1979, schools said, we don't know how to measure equality in opportunities. How do you measure that? How do you know if you're providing equal opportunity? This test was actually, I'm going to go through it, but I'm going to explain to you, it was written by the football interests, not by women's sports advocates. All right. So the first way kind of makes sense, which is proportionality. That's what we've been talking about this entire time, which is, do men and women have the same percentage, the same proportion of opportunities? In other words, at the school, is it 1 in 10 women have an opportunity and 1 in 10 men who are at the school, do they have an opportunity to play sports? Okay, so it kind of makes sense, right? It'd be dumb for either men or women to be able to say, no, women should get more than that. All right. The second one is, if a school can say that they have continuously improved for the last 50 years, right? So we're not there yet, but we can show that we have continuously improved. So every 3 years, they either made a team bigger or they added a new team. And then third is, if a school can show that it is meeting the interests and abilities of the student athletes on campus. Now that is, okay, so let's talk about these last 2 tests. First of all, the law has been now around, as we've said, for 49 years, and it's almost impossible for a school to show that they have continuous improvement. But still, that's a very weird test. There's no other place in all of civil rights that anybody can say, we know we're discriminating, we know we have women that are interested in doing it, but we're getting there. The third way, but this interest and abilities, that comes from this idea that women are just not as interested in participating in sports. And we know that's, if Title IX has proven anything, it is that girls and women are equally as interested in playing sports. That old saying, if you build it, they will come, holds true when it comes to what we know about sports. The reason why, think about all your friends who didn't get college scholarships, who didn't get opportunities to participate in college sports, and they think that they weren't good enough. They think they didn't measure up, they didn't meet the bar. And the truth is, they are victims of intentional sex discrimination to deny them an opportunity to play sport. So this interest and abilities, it's about 60% of high school students play a sport. And when you get down to college, it goes down to about 4%. And all these really big schools, it's between 1 and 2%. That's one of the things that we have on our website, is what percentage of the students participate in sports. And we say that, like, you can't even talk about meeting interests and abilities until you get at least 25% of your student body, because you're pulling from a demographic of at least 60%, right? Um, so, so that's why we mostly talk about prong one. It could be that a school can come back and say, show us, we have the research. It's actually kind of hard to meet interests and abilities. A school's required to do a lot. But hypothetically, they could come back and say, look, we have this long history of continuous improvement. In theory, that could happen. I have not seen it. I've never once seen a school show me the data that they could comply with prongs 2 or 3. And that's saying something. All right, next slide. Okay, in prong 2 or 3, when a school cuts a team, by nature, right, you don't have this history of continuous improvement, number one. And 2 is you're not meeting the interests and abilities because you have students who are there at the school that want to play that sport. So those 2 prongs, when a school cuts a team, those are out. They have to be in compliance with prong 1. All right. So does everybody get it? So there are three things schools have to do: opportunities, scholarships, benefits, and treatment. This opportunities, the law gives them 3 different ways. It's an or test. It's either proportionality or a continuous history or meeting the interests and abilities. Okay. So we're talking about just opportunities. Okay. But people can sue just for benefits or just for scholarships, right? You don't necessarily, even if they are meeting the opportunities. All right. So who does decide? Go through. It's the athletic department. It's the school. They decide how it is that they're going to allocate their resources, right? They got to buy land. They got to build a softball facility. They've got to do all these things. They've got to hire a coach, et cetera. Next slide, please. Okay, this title, oh yeah. Does it ever require schools to take opportunities away from men and give them to women? Never. Schools can do that. That is a choice. Back in the 1950s, when Brown versus Board of Education came out, and communities had swimming pools and golf courses, and schools chose to close those facilities rather than integrate. Goes up to the United States Supreme Court. Supreme Court says that's okay as long as it's equally bad for everyone. So schools can make these really terrible decisions, but it's not Title IX's fault. Title IX is a civil rights statute. It cannot keep schools from making bad decisions. All it can do is get equality between men and women.
Don't men's sports make the money? Shouldn't they get more?
Yeah. So I have answered this question more times than probably any other question that I get, but usually they don't say it nearly as nicely as Mason just did. Usually they say it very snarkily, like, duh, they make more money. Okay. So remember, sports, when schools are offering this, these are educational opportunities. This is the same thing as math class. And if you can't discriminate in a math class, because some of those students are going to build a patent. Let's say that only Caucasian students had a patent. You couldn't deny the rest of the student body with opportunities in that math class. Same thing with if you had a donor that said, I want this, I want to give you money and I want you to build this facility, and only white people can go into this building. No people of color can go into this building. Well, duh, the school can't do that. They can't accept money that would just, so when a school wants to give money to one program and because sports are sex segregated, they are giving to either men or to women. So the school has the responsibility of making sure, no matter what the source of the funds are coming in, that they provide equality. Okay. Over the last 10, 15 years, we've just seen this huge explosion of revenue dollars for sports. Part of that has to do with how media is operating right now. People don't fast forward, they actually watch the commercials. And so it makes the commercials much more valuable. So we've seen this a ton of more money going into sports, and mostly where it's going is into the back pocket of very few number of people. It's going into coaches and athletic directors. It is not going to make things equal. So it doesn't matter where the money comes from, okay, with donors, sponsors, television rights, ticket sales, COVID budget, there are no justifications for treating women like second-class citizens.
Title IX was passed in 1972. In 1975, the Department of Education passed regulations mandating schools be in compliance within 3 years. Why are so many schools still not in compliance with Title IX 49 years after it was enacted?
It's depressing. It is because nobody wants to be the bad guy. Nobody wants to be the one to require schools. I mean, what I would say, the adults in the room, right? So the NCAA used to have a rule called certification that required, if you want to be a member of Division I, you had to provide gender equity. And as soon as Mark Emmert, the current president, came on board, he did away with certification because it was getting in the way of him making money. And you see when he came on board how the gap between men's and women's programming grew.
Why must current students be the ones to take legal action? Why can't former students, parents, coaches, or donors take legal action?
Yeah. So they can take legal action when it comes to filing a complaint with the Office for Civil Rights. But that's part of your course today on law. Janine is going to go to law school in the fall. And one of the things you learn is like, who gets to bring the lawsuit? And it usually has to be a party with real interest in the matter. That's why it has to be a current enrolled student to be able to bring the lawsuit, to be able to bring legal action against the school.
My question is, what does a student need in order to file legal action?
Yeah, you need usually a group of students who are willing to put their name on the case, and they need a lawyer. And the lawyers that we work with, number one is we make sure that they have what they need to be able to bring the case. There are lawyers doing nothing but employment law right here in Jacksonville. I guarantee you, there's probably not a single attorney who's ever done a Title IX case. So, right, so we give them sample pleadings and sample everything. So we make sure they're really good litigators. We make sure that they're resourced enough so they can keep the light bills on. Sometimes the cases go really quickly. Sometimes like the school like says, you got us, oh, you caught us. And they fold and it's a couple of months and you get a huge whopping change. And other times, like we saw with Cohen versus Brown University, they just, stall and are annoying and do everything that they can. Again, it's one of the few times when the facts and law are really clear. Most of the time they're not, but they'll still argue with you. So you got to make sure that the lawyer can stay in the game, because if they can't, then they'll like, oh, you put a fence around the women's softball field, good, and they get their check and they're gone. So we need to make sure that the lawyers who are there are in it for the right reason, that they can get the system-wide change, not just teeny tiny little increments.
What are the steps to taking legal action?
So after you reach out to us, and we have a list of attorneys, Janine and I have been going around to different attorneys and kind of getting their okay. It takes them a while. Like they've got to go get they've got to make sure that they have the financing to be able to do it. The way they get paid is at the end of the case. So typically, sometimes they may ask students to help out with the hard costs. So it's usually like $500 to file a case. If you do a deposition, there's hard costs associated with that. But for the most part, they assume the cost of doing the case. And it's always helpful in getting really good lawyers if we can show them that, that plaintiffs have won every single case that has been decided on the merits. So they've lost some when the lawyer doesn't get class action status and the students graduate. They've lost some of those, right? So if they mess up on procedural grounds, but the ones that are decided on the merits, plaintiffs have won. Again, the law is crazy good for plaintiffs. Okay, so the steps are, you need to get with an attorney. They're going to ask you, they're going to ask the students for certain facts for them to swear in front. Okay. But just so you'll know, because a lot of students want to know this is, well, are they going to find out about, that I was drinking too much last weekend? They don't care about that. If it doesn't have to do with opportunities to participate in sports, they don't care about, usually people are like, oh, I've got this something that I'm nervous about. No, they don't care. So don't worry about any of that. All right, next. Good job, Mel.
How much will it cost a student to take legal action? How long will the process take?
Usually it doesn't cost anything for the student to take legal action. How long does the process take? Honestly, it depends 100% on the school, on what, do they have this reaction of, oh my God, you got us? Or do they have the issue of, they're going to fight every single step? It also depends on who the insurance carrier is. If the insurance carrier demands that the school settles the case really quickly, then it usually does. So you honestly don't know. The longest case that I know of is it was a high school case in the Michigan High School Athletic Association. It took 11 years. 11 years. So my friend did the case, and imagine getting 11 years worth of work in one check at the end of 11 years. Fastest is like 2 weeks.
Will schools retaliate against a student who files legal action? And will the students end up being investigated with the other side digging into her social media accounts and personal life?
Okay. Retaliation is equally as protected as the sex discrimination itself, meaning that if a school retaliates, that's just as bad as if they discriminated against in the first place. I've actually had several cases where it was easier to prove the retaliation than it was to prove the initial case. So, and schools and lawyers all know how easy it is to prove retaliation. So they usually don't. Like people are scared that they're going to lose connection with their school, or that they're not going to get the letters of recommendation or something. It just doesn't happen. I mean, and one of the things that we want to do as part of this process is have people who've already gone through the process describe what it was like for them to go through, and honestly, how proud they are of themselves for having gone through this process, because they're creating generations of change for athletes who come behind them.
Hi, Nancy. My question is, are there success stories for this form of legal action?
Like I was saying, they're all success stories. Like the plaintiffs win all the time. If you bring a claim and you've got the facts of law on your side, it's kind of like the dice are loaded before you bring the claim. So there's plenty of success stories out there. And in the Cohen versus Brown case is one example. They have plaques up to Amy Cohen, one of the main plaintiffs. There are plenty of success stories, and they know what their willingness to step on the line did for future generations. The answer is Champion Women. So we have the network of attorneys. There are some attorneys that that are actually pretty well known, but I would suggest that you not go to them. So please go to us. We know who the good ones are. We don't have any financial stake at all, but we know who the good ones are, and we know who the ones that won't go the cheap route, if you will. One of the cases that is already settled, the plaintiff's attorney agreed that the school would pick another attorney to come in and do a Title IX evaluation of the school. Well, guess what? The person that they hired works for schools and has been telling schools essentially how to cheat. And so they're never like, you just wasted $200,000. Can male students sue to support the rights of women? The answer is no. It needs to be women who are suing to be. But what the men can do is it really helps to say, have like the men's lacrosse team put out a statement saying they're being supportive of the legal action that women are taking, right? Or the men's basketball team or football team or baseball team, or right, whatever the sport is, for them to say that they're supportive of what it is that the women are doing. It's really important. We recently saw that in several Title IX cases where the men have been phenomenal. Yeah.
Right. Well, if we're at the wrap up point, I'm happy to do that. I want to thank Nancy for her incredibly detailed and her presentation and the depth of her experience and expertise. We wouldn't have any of the tools to do this work without someone like Nancy, who's been, as she explained, devoted her career to this work. So thank you.